Welcome to Longbox Diving, where we pull comics out of the long box. Take 3. Today we're covering these two bad boys. Let me start off with this cover. This is X-Men 14. Just the X-Men. I don't know how I feel about this comic. Before I get into reviews, just the cover. This is kind of misleading. It's just the general X-Men and Apocalypse. But, big but, I like it. Because the misleading, I think, fits for that specific issue. Don't look at me. I think it does. So, that's my opinion on that one. This one, great, fits for the issue. You can see all the X-Men, X-Force, X-Factor troops fighting in one big brawl. You know what to expect for this issue. It's pretty clear, and you get it. Just, I'm trying to do more of those where we talk about covers, because covers tend to be a point of contention, and they're still part of the comic. They're a big reason why you buy comics is, oh, that cover looks cool, let me take a look at the comic. And then you get disappointed. So, just like the X-Men. Because they find out Xavier is dying. The technovirus is slowly eating up his body. And he is dying. Slowly becoming a Transformer. Fortunately, that series is better than X-Men. You have some of the best minds trying to help Xavier. You have Morita, the Beast, other people who are very talented individuals and doctors, and they have no clue. None of them know what this virus really is or how it works. It replicates faster than they can come up with treatments for it. Anything they do try, the virus gets smarter and goes around it. They're not doing a whole lot of progress, so instead they've got to find something better as a solution. So what do? First, they tell the rest of the X-Men, and it's a cool panel because you see all of them lined up just in the mansion. Most of them. Lined up in the mansion. And I kind of like that. Because this is a big crossover event, let's get all of the teams together to be in one scene. I really do. I really like that. But they split up to 3 groups. Okay, the first one is there to track down Apocalypse. They think Apocalypse has something to do with it, so they're gonna find out where Scott and Jean are, because Apocalypse took Scott and Jean, right? Second team goes to track down X-Force. To find out whether or not they are in cahoots with Cable, and to figure out everything they know, correct? Because we all know X-Force know something about Cable, right? They obviously must know something about where Cable is at any given point in time. I am not looking up X-Force right now to make sure I have it right. You don't know my life. The third team is Bishop and Jubilee, and the other people at the mansion. They are there to make sure and keep Professor X safe, and Bishop is taking this very seriously, and Jubilee's like, this isn't a big deal, stop worrying about it. I like Jubilee's vibe. Better than DC's vibe, am I right? That one got me. That was not scripted. I'm going off track. I am getting it right. It is X-Force. So they split up. The next panels we see are two bozos. One looks like a Hercules ripoff. The other one is Captain Planet and Domino had a child. If you see the panel, you know exactly what I mean. And they're in the jungle waiting on a shipment. Who are they waiting for, and who else is in the story with some prized possession? But nobody, Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister is not using Scott and Jean for DNA modification like I presupposed. He's instead trading them for something more valuable. What is more valuable than Scott Summers and Jean Grey? I wonder. But yeah, he trades them to the two bozos who reek of being creeps. Like, you know, they're dirty mercenaries. And the delivery bot just shows up out of nowhere and hands Mr. Sinister something. Mr. Sinister calls it the piece of the future. And if you look at this art, it almost looks like he's licking it. Like, I don't know. And maybe that's just me. But it looks like he's licking the technology. It's just... I'm tired. We go back to X-Force. And their ship is going down. Remember in the last issue, their ship got hit with a beam of energy as they were fleeing. Well, now it's affecting them. They are now trying to get as far as they can before the X-Men show up and their ship is going down. And this I think is actually part of my favorite panels of the entire comic. This scene I think is my favorite because it showed the X-Force are pretty young, right? Most of them aren't experienced mutants like the X-Men. They're not government agents like X-Factor. The X-Force are all pretty young. They just came off of being the new mutants, right? But in this scene, you really get a sense that they are determined and grim. That you are facing the X-Men and X-Factor. And you are still moving on. Good on you guys. Do whatever you can and stand up for yourselves. Good on them. And there's this panel. It shows Sam's face, right? And I don't know what it is about this panel, but the way they colored it just made it very impactful for me. Because it really conveys a sense of Sam is determined here. This is not a winning battle. They are not going to win, but they are going to stand up for themselves and do every single thing they can. And I love it. Richter has a cool shot where he's doing his vibro earthquake thing, and it slows down the ship enough so they don't all explode. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. We get another scene in the jungle, different jungle, of Apocalypse's servants going and waking up Apocalypse early. See, Apocalypse needs his beauty sleep. Apocalypse, if he doesn't get 8 hours of rest, he wakes up a cranky baby. These people woke him up at 5 hours. Okay, so Apocalypse 1 is not ready for the day. 2, he's a cranky baby. But they do wake him up, and they say, "Hey, Apocalypse, your horsemen are kidnapping X-Men under your name. That's pretty great, but I think you should be awake to see that. And Apocalypse is like, wait, what? I didn't tell them to do that. So he now is going to go find out why his horsemen are doing things without him even being awake. Who does that at 4 o'clock in the morning? Who does that? The X-Men begin to track down X-Force. They receive the news about Professor X. They're going to go track him down, so they begin tracking him down. And they're all together in the Blackbird to go and track X-Force. And there's some interesting scenes here because the X-Factor certainly believes X-Force is to blame. X-Factor doesn't like X-Force. But the X-Men almost seem defeatist. Like they failed their charges, right? That how could it get this bad? How did they ever let it get this bad to where X-Force would just rebel? And it's an interesting mentality. It's pretty interesting. They mention X-Force doesn't act like the new mutants. They're not young kids anymore. They're grown. And that they're not, the X-Men aren't ready for that. Wolverine has an interesting quote. The dream is dead, and life is a nightmare. If that isn't nihilism, I don't know what is. Jeepers, Wolverine. Cable wakes up. But wait, what? Cable wakes up? Bam, bam, bam! I bet I just spiked the audio. How could Cable just wake up after a long period of slumber? I wonder. But Cable does, and he's talking to the professor in his head. And the professor's getting him updated about what's going on. And he's like, somebody shot Professor X. Cable's like, who did? Well, you did. It's like, come on, Professor. You know this Cable has not moved. He's been sleeping. So he could not have done it. So somebody else did. Bishop and Jubilee are hanging outside the X-Mansion. Jubilee is like, yo, you need to chill out, man. Bishop's like, I'm hardcore. I can never chill out. Not even for a second. Hardcore. And Jubilee's like, yo, have some tea, man. And Bishop takes the cup and takes a sip. And then the alarms go off because the moment Bishop relaxes for even a second, the alarms go off. And this is a funny panel because Bishop literally tosses the glass behind him right into the grass because he doesn't care about cleaning up. Thanks, Bishop. Ruining the environment. The moment he gets inside the door, you know who it is? Mr. Sinister. He's traveled from the jungles, presumably wherever that's at, all the way up to Xavier Mansion in New York in a blink of an eye. Because it's not been that long, because the X-Men have been chasing X-Force, and it's not been that long, maybe a couple hours. So that's, if that, and that's being lenient. He can teleport. The X-Men land at the site of the crash, and they can't find X-Force. Their sense being masked. The psychics can't read the minds. Everything is almost like a mask. And then they're ambushed. X-Force ambushes the X-Men and X-Factor. I love these kids. They have some spunk, man. It's like, yo, we are not going to win this, but let's do everything we can. Wolverine has the healing factor. But they try anyway. They do try. And they get into a fight. And it's pretty awesome. I am not kidding. Buy this comic because the fight scenes are pretty cool. Also buy this whole arc. Support your comic creators in your local comic book shops. Stormstream team tracks down Apocalypse's old house and in hopes of maybe he's still there. They do find the Horsemen. 3 of them. Remember, war, famine, and death. Okay. And they fight the Horsemen. There's some cool panels here of more fighting. If you love action, this is a great comic for that. Bishop and Mr. Sinister have a standoff, and Mr. Sinister's like, I am glad to see there's one X-Men worthy of being praised in this time. And Bishop's not from that time. But besides that, they have a standoff, and Bishop shoots Mr. Sinister in the head. Mr. Sinister has hostages, and Bishop still shoots him because he's hardcore. Here's another panel. Cable looks ridiculous with all that gear on. He's basically getting ready to go fight whoever's the imposter, but whoever drew this, it looks silly, and it's not proportioned even for superheroes, because superheroes have a body type and it's not human. But this is ridiculous. We then find out who is holding Scott and Jean hostage. Guess who? Strife! Strife is a villain who's been around a couple times. I know who Strife is. Do you know who Strife is? Comment down below. Hint. He calls them father, mother. Is this because of the parents of the mutant race? If you know your X-Men, that's incorrect. They don't parent a lot of mutants. So maybe it's something more literal. Do your homework. X-Force gets slowly picked off in the rest of the comic. One by one they drop. Because again, it's not a winning fight. The X-Men are just well trained. They are well trained compared to the rest of the mutants there. And X-Force just doesn't stand a chance. Siren gets knocked out by Psylocke. Feral gets knocked out by Wolverine. It's like all the X-Men are just better versions of each of the X-Force. And I'm being kind of extravagant here, but you do see it. Psylocke is a better version of Siren. Wolverine is by far a better version of Feral, etc., etc. Richter's pretty unique, but and they get arrested. The X-Force literally gets arrested and taken back to Xavier Mansion, which is an interesting way to end the comic. But again, I don't feel that's justified in any way. Come on, guys, talk. Brotherhood concert. Come on. Thank you for joining us in the log box. I'll see you sometime. Welcome to Longbox Comics, where we pulled... I said that wrong. Welcome to Longbox Diving, where we pull comics out of the long box. Got it this time. Today, we're looking at... Oh, the light. We're looking at... This is a mess. I'm going to pause this and remake this.